school, kids, grandkids, family? Everybody good? That's good. Anybody have any prayer requests or praise reports before we get started?
Remember Jennifer, her baby should be here on March 17th, C-section. And all will be well.
We're going to be praying for her.
Yeah, working with Allison Smith, her father passed away this week, so we remember Mary. Remember Wanda, Sister Wanda, Mary.
Nothing else, we'll open with a word of prayer. Court, can you lead us?
Father, Lord, thank you for another day that you've given us on this earth. We're thankful for our health that we have and the ability to come to your house and to study your word and learn more about you and learn more about what you commanded us to do. Father, thank you for all these things. Thank you for watching over me in my life and where you put me and where I've been able to grow up at. Thank you for all these things. And thank you, God, that you know what we stand in need of, and I pray that you supply those needs in whatever way that may come. I ask that you give Michael your wisdom and strength, not his, but yours, that he may teach and expound this lesson and tell us what you have commanded us to do and how to go about living. I pray for those that are sick, those that are hurting, those that have upcoming trials to face. I pray that you be with them, give them peace and comfort through all these things. And ask, God, that you go with us throughout the rest of this day, throughout the rest of this service, and help us to honor and love you. I pray these things in Christ's name. Let it be your will.
Amen. Well, it's good to see everyone back for our second lesson. Glad to see we got a couple new faces. Quick recap from last week. Remember, we are ambassadors for Christ. That doesn't mean just to be a representative here at church, but to be His representative everywhere, every day. We got that? All right. Also, remember, we need to keep fighting the good fight against the ants. That's A-N-T-S. Automatic negative thoughts. When they enter your mind, you need to find strength in the Lord to get past them and continue to do His work. Is everybody doing that? Good. Something that I heard this week at work. We had a big project going on and lots of different people involved and different people from different departments, different levels, and I heard the phrase, "That's not my job," and then I heard somebody else say, "That's above my pay grade." How many times have we all heard that at our places of work? It's frustrating, isn't it? Sometimes everybody just needs to pull together and forget about levels or titles or anything, and we all need to get on the same side and pull in the same direction. Don't forget, that's what our job is in the Great Commission. We're all on the same side, pulling in that direction. Looking back at what we again studied last week, we had some questions that were brought up. Remember, who are you praying for that is lost? Who have you shared Christ with this month? What ants have you allowed to hinder you in sharing? And are you living intentionally to notice people in your life and how God might want to use you to minister to them? Does anyone want to share?
tell you what happened to me last week. I had to work last Sunday, but I came to the Sunday school. And so it's a retirement community, and it was a 95-year-old man who had just moved in, and he had to move his wife to memory care. And he was an assistant. So we had just had your lesson, and I went up there to go see him because he'd only been there a couple of days. So we got talking, and all of a sudden he said, "Are you a Christian?" I was like, "Oh my gosh." I profess that I'm a Christian, and the way that I try to act, but I don't ever go up to somebody and go, "Hey," that's what I'm trying to learn. So he said, "Are you a Christian?" And I said, "Yes, sir, I am a Christian." And he said, "Why do bad things happen to Christians?" And so I won't go into it, but I spoke to what I felt like he wanted to hear, or what was the truth. And he looked at me and he said, "You're right." He said, "I pray." And so finally I said, "Are you a Christian?" And he said, "Yes, I am." He said, "I don't go to church." He said, "I was a Catholic and we just got out of the church." And so anyway, we just kept talking. We shared the Bible, and he shared with me, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so glad that we had that class."
I'm sure each one of you has a story just like that, something that happened to you this week. But that's awesome. That's what we want to hear. That is just wonderful. And
it did make me feel good afterwards. I was like,
yeah. It's no coincidence, is it? None. I guess that just kind of leads us into what our lesson is titled today. And as you can see in your sheets, it's titled Intentionally Practical. And if you were here last week, what's my first question going to be based on that title? What does that mean? What does intentionally mean to you?
meant to do it?
Meant to do it. Deliberate, purposeful. Our lesson today does a great job in giving us the tools needed to be deliberate and purposeful in our walk of evangelism. Now, unfortunately, I don't have a famous quote for you guys today, but I do have a history story I think correlates to our lesson that I'd like to share with you guys. And if you'll just bear with me, this is a little lengthy, but I think it speaks volumes for what we're trying to do. This takes place during World War II with an enlisted medic named Desmond Doss. His faith and trust in God was so strong that he refused to carry a weapon when he went into combat. He did not believe in violence, but what he did carry with him was his Bible and his faith in God. History goes on to tell us the unfortunate battlefield he and his battalion fought in was located on top of a 400-foot cliff. It was heavily fortified by the enemy, and things didn't look good for him and his men. The cliff soon received the nickname Hacksaw Ridge for how treacherous it was. The mission Doss and his men were tasked with in taking this ridge was thought to be near impossible. As the battle raged on, a retreat was ordered for Doss and his men. Those that were able began to retreat, and those that were injured were unable to make it back down the cliff and were left for dead. Imminent destruction awaited the injured soldiers that were left behind, but only one able-bodied soldier remained. That was Doss. The medic refused to leave his fallen companions behind. Facing relentless attack from the enemy, Doss repeatedly ran alone into the danger zone, carrying wounded soldiers to the edge of the cliff and single-handedly lowering them down to safety. Each time he saved a man's life, Doss prayed out loud, saying, "Lord, please help me get another." By the end of the night, he had rescued an estimated 75 men. This is how we should be looking at our spiritual battle we are in. We should be asking ourselves every day, how do we get one more? Today, our lesson does an excellent job of teaching us how to apply specific tactics towards our pursuit in reaching out to someone very specific in our lives. If you'll turn to Matthew chapter 4, verse 19, there's something that we need to read in there. And again, like last week, if you'd like to read for us, I appreciate that. Go ahead and raise your hand if you want to read.
And he saith unto them, Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men.
What a powerful verse. I know we've got some fishermen out here in our crowd today, and I've gone fishing a time or two, and you get disappointed when you don't catch anything. But sometimes it's not about catching something, it's about the time that you get to spend with your friends and your family. I guess in this case, we are trying to catch something. We're trying to fill our nets with those that don't know Jesus. And hopefully last week, if you took anything away, you have a better understanding as to why we are doing this, why we are having this lesson. And this week, we further learn the steps and questions we must be willing to ask someone to continue on that journey. I'm sure many of you have heard of the 4 W's. This is a great tool to use when it comes to understanding a certain subject or a problem. Does anyone want to volunteer in what those 4 W's are? That's right. Who, what, where, and when. You're probably asking, just like I was asking, or wondering, how does being a detective going to help us evangelize to someone? Well, let's start with that first one. Who are we going after? If you'll turn to Luke chapter 19, verse 10, we have our answer. I'll give you a moment to turn to that. And again, if somebody wants to read that, I invite you to. Luke chapter 19, verse 10.
For the Son of Man is come to seek and to save that which was lost.
Who?
The Son of Man. Lost.
That which was lost. That's who we're going after. I hope by now you've been taking a few notes, maybe jotting down a few things. If you haven't, now's a good time to pick up a pen or a pencil and start writing this stuff down. There's going to be a test at the end of our lesson today. Here are some personal questions that we can begin asking. Our literature does a great job of just point blank giving us these questions. Name someone that is related to you who is not a Christian. And you can write that down and keep that personal to yourself. Think about it. Is there a family member, a friend? I know I've got plenty of people. Name someone that lives near you who is not a Christian. Your neighbor? Somebody that you go to the store and see? Name someone that you work with or go to school with who is not a Christian. I know there's plenty of people that I've gone to school with and people that I've gone to work with that you can just tell just by a few bits of conversation with them that they're not. But that's why we're in this lesson. That's why we have this class going on, so we can figure out how do we bridge that gap. Name someone that you have encountered in your weekly schedule who is not a Christian. I'm sure just like me, going to the store, you can take one look at somebody maybe and say, yeah, they're probably not. I hate to say that we're going to judge by how somebody looks, but unfortunately, that's the world we live in. And then lastly, name someone you are connected with on social media who's not a Christian. I know a lot of us have social media, and you probably have friends that you're with. You probably see bits and pieces of their life scrolling through, and you probably post things and they see bits and pieces of your life, but are you really friends? But the big question is, are they Christian? The next W, what? Now you know who your audience is, and the next thing you need to do is take action by planning something with them. So you've written somebody's name down maybe, or just my neighbor on your paper. You've got who you're going to go after. Now you've got to take action. This next step is a strategic step we can take because this allows us to get in front of them on their terms. By reaching out to them and asking to meet with them in an environment where they are comfortable, you are capturing their attention and hopefully getting the opportunity to talk with them. I know sometimes we can struggle with maybe just flat out inviting someone to church. For some people, it can be an uncomfortable place. For us, this is the most comfortable place we can be at right now, isn't it? Remember, we're in a battle here, and it's okay to be strategic. As long as they agree to meet you on their terms, it's fair game. So where are you going to meet? Write that down. Think about somewhere where a good place to meet that person is. Do they like coffee? Invite them to coffee. Are they a coach? Go volunteer to help them coach the team. Are they working on a project or working on something at their house? Are they trimming their bushes? Are they fixing something in their garage? Walk right up to them and start talking to them. Is it a family that you're concerned about? Invite them over for dinner. I know we got a lot of good cooks here. Again, some questions we can begin asking ourselves. What are some things that you can do to reach out to people? I can't answer that for you. You've got to answer that question for yourself. You've got to write it down. Something we can do together is, what are some things that our class can do together to reach out to people? Anybody got an idea, suggestion? Something we've been doing for a little bit, maybe.
Invite them to Sunday school and church, and when people show up that we don't know, always, if at all possible, go to them and welcome them and just ask them, always ask them where they're from, and usually they're from right around in here, and then I ask them if they have a church.
Mm-hmm. That's perfect. That's what we're supposed to do. Again, if we aren't taking action to reach that lost person, we aren't following the instructions given to us in the Great Commission. Think about something you can do this week to begin building that relationship with a lost person in your life. And most importantly, commit to it. So we got who, what, and now we come to when. This next W is probably the most important, because it ensures that you and that lost person meet. Be specific with that person and put a date and time on the calendar. This not only holds you accountable, but it holds them accountable too. I can't tell you how many times I've been at work and somebody has come up to me and said, "Hey, I need your help doing this thing." And then 5 minutes later, somebody else comes up and says, "Hey, I need your help doing this thing." And then next thing I know, I get back to my desk and I've got a meeting invite for something totally different. And so now those first two people that asked me for help are overrun by what this meeting is. That's what you've got to do. Put that meeting on their calendar. Put it on your calendar. And don't forget, everybody's got cell phones. Put a reminder in your phone. Tell them to get their phone out. Hey, let's make a meeting invite right now. And 5 minutes before the meeting, call them. Say, "Hey, we're still meeting, right?" If you don't put a timestamp on when you want your what to happen with your who, then it leaves too many opportunities for your meeting to fall through the cracks. Hopefully you've got a few bullet points already written down on your sheet. Maybe put a sentence together along the lines of, "I am going to have lunch with so-and-so this Thursday." Our last W is where. Again, if you remember last week, we read that we are a peculiar people. And it just so happens that a synonym for peculiar is curious. We can use our own curiosity to our advantage. I want you to understand what makes them tick. Find out what they like. See how you can fit in their life to begin asking them the hard questions. When you start asking those questions, you have a powerful ability to lead the discussion and dictate where that conversation goes. You have the opportunity to ask things like, "Do you see yourself as a spiritual person? What are your beliefs about that? If you think there is a heaven, how does someone get there?" Hopefully that opens the door for them to say, "What is heaven?" If they don't know what that is, that's your door wide open. All you got to do is step through. Something else you can ask is, in your spiritual journey, have you come to the place where you have a relationship with God through His Son, Jesus, or is that something you are trying to figure out? Something simple you can just ask to break the ice is, do you or your family do religious things? Do you attend church? That's one I've used a number of times. Where do you go to church? That kind of sets the tone for what your conversation is going to be like. It's either going to be yes, no, or maybe, but if maybe, that's more yes than it is no. Once they say yes or maybe, then you start asking, okay, where do you go to church? You can find out a little bit more about who they are just by where they go to church. By asking those kind of questions, this gives you the knowledge of how to take the information they are giving you and use it to further advance the conversation. Remember, we're being strategic. Think about the answers they're giving you. How do you use that to further this discussion? You don't want them to run away. You may begin to start asking some of those tough questions. If they get defensive, that's okay. That just means you're starting to get somewhere. You might not be successful on your first attempt. That person you're talking to may just say, I don't want to hear anything else that you've got to say, and they may walk away. And that's fine. Try not to be discouraged with that. The best thing you can do is look at that conversation as you've just started planting the seeds. Because what may happen one day is the seeds that you planted, and the next person in line starts watering them, and the next person in line starts giving them the loving, tender care that that seed needs to eventually grow. You may not be the one that they break down to and realize they are lost, but by simply putting these thoughts into their mind, or at least allowing them to think about it, that may be the starting point of their eventual salvation. What do you guys think? Anybody have any thoughts or anything they want to share?
When I was growing up, it was who, what, when, where, why, and how. But I guess we covered the why last week, really, because God commanded us to. I mean, that really is the why, because we're supposed to.
You brought up a good point. How? I've heard that one too. How? How are we supposed to do this?
Sometimes it's as simple as being kind. If there's, like you said, a regular place that you visit and maybe it's the same person who works at the same, about the same, you see them on a regular basis, even though you don't know them, it's just being nice and sweet. So that it can, so maybe a conversation later can come up where it's not necessarily you're not drilling them, but you just get to know each other on a
Personal level.
personal level.
Yep.
And that kind of the point of today's lesson is being intentional about seeing where they stand with God and trying to, work and help and be the salt in the light, but being intentional. But I found that like one conversation is great, but it really requires like, checking back in and calling back, and this is suggested setting up a meeting and a time to get together, and that's not extraordinary things to do. That's it requires great intention to follow up. And I think that whenever you read the Great Commission and go into all the world and teach, it's an ongoing thing. It's something that we do intentionally and regular. Evangelism and discipleship is something that takes place over a period of time, not like once. Most of the time.
Yeah.
All right, Brushy Mountain, the guy up at Brushy Mountain Prison, his testimony, he was the worst of the worst, he said, but he remembers that guy that didn't give up on him, but kept on coming in and saying, look, you're better than this, you're not done for, and stuff like that. Finally, the Lord saved you, but everybody else all would give up on him, but there was one man in particular that was intentional about continuing to meet with him, and then the Lord finally saved him. More powerful testimony he's got too.
Does anybody have anything else they want to share? Maybe something that you thought about this week, somebody you came across.
Michael, I think writing down names is a big deal. And I've said this before, but whenever you say pray for the lost, that's just kind of lumping everybody together. It's not very personal, but when you get a name on it, it's somebody.
Yep.
And that's a great first step of being intentional about it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if I read that right, maybe that could potentially be 5 people, just using the criteria that you just laid out.
Yeah.
That's potentially 5 people per person in this room. And that's a lot of people
Yeah.
for the gospel to go out to. It may not happen over a week, but that's a great place to start, just writing down a name.
Everybody's got a name on their sheet, right? That's the test at the end of the lesson. You either pass or fail. You got to have a name. If you don't know their name, say person at the grocery store, person at work, my neighbor. Be specific and be intentional in what we do. Just like the story that we heard today, the example. I mean, that's why we're doing this. There's a reason we're all sitting here in this class today studying this stuff, because there's going to be that opportunity that you are given to take action. And you've got the tools to do it now.
I think when people come up to you, it's intentionally because God is sending those people to you, whether you're in the grocery store or wherever you may be. They come and they start the conversation, then God leads you to, to interact with them with His word, and then before you know it, the conversation is all about God. It's not what you thought they was coming to talk to you about. I know that happens to me a lot in the store.
Oh yeah.
People, you know, they doing something or they say, oh, hi, and then they'll, oh, what cute little kid, whatever. They start the conversation, but then one little word slips. It don't slip God attention and make it slip. And then the conversation go on. But it's all in doing that kindness, that love, and showing respect, and knowing that you serve God. You know, when you serve God, it seems like a lot of things comes out when people don't intend for it to come out, and then you done pull someone in, you done planted a seed, and then they go on. That seed is planted, so they're thinking, and we may go and we may plant that seed and may never see that person again, but one day you may run into that person and get to heaven, and that person say, thank you, you know, I remember you.
Mm-hmm.
And you done already brought one in, and you keep adding. To me, you keep adding that way. People that don't really know about the word, you start to talk. I talked to a friend of mine, which is my brother-in-law, and his wife. I talked to him more than I talked to her. And it's questions he asked, and I know then, you don't know anything really about the word. And I tell someone, you have to read the word to know. I can't help about what people say. That's the worldly thing. They say what they want to say. And they will say and deter you from the word. That's their job, because that's how the enemy get in. And he asked me a question the other day, and I said, when people do things that they're not supposed to do, and they know it's wrong, but they find a way to fix it where it fit them. And I said, but it's wrong when you, and the thing was, we was on the thing of marriage. I said, when you married to that person. You have eyes for that person. Don't let your eyes wander. I said, yeah, we got eyes we could see, but we don't let them wander. I said, because then you start involving yourself in things. That person may get hurt, and the person you with is definitely gonna be hurt. And I said, you can't do that. I said, you know, even though things don't always happen the way we want them to happen at home, we have to talk, we have to communicate, we have to do things to keep that interest in our lives. You have to do things to please your wife. She has to do things to please you. It's not a one-way relationship. It's a relationship combined together. God brought both of you together, so you have to compromise in something that you do.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't, then you venture off. And when you venture off, you done hurt a lot of other people in the process.
Yeah.
So even when we look at someone and think the wrong thing about someone, you know, we have to go back and pray and say, Lord, did I say something or did I think that wrong about that person? But always, you know, ask God for forgiveness for your thought.
Yeah.
Because your thought is your thoughts.
Yeah.
You know,
I loved
nobody
what-
knows your thought but God.
I loved what you said, that God's putting us in that position for a reason.
Right.
And just like what we had talked about, you know, we are ambassadors for Him, and He knows that. And, you know, it's very interesting how we are put in certain situations, and it's up to us to act on that.
Follow the Spirit.
That's right. That's right. guys got anything else?
In a lot of what Beverly said, you know, in the same opposite way, you know, I think it was this week or last week I heard it said that, you know, Satan, he is looking at what are your weaknesses, even if you don't even realize it's a weakness, or a crack in your,
Armor.
armor. He's gonna throw, especially if you're trying to do and stay on the right path, he's gonna do everything he can to put things right out in front of you just to see what you'll do. He wants to trip you up. So it's so easy to later look back and go, oh, he got me. It's like if we could be proactive, and I'm talking to myself, to not fall for that, or to resist it, or when you do feel that way, or it's so easy to fly off the handle, that's your first reaction is you just wanna get mad and, you know, hold something against somebody or whatever, you just have to say, Lord, help me not to deter, don't let this be, because he would have nothing more than for us to be deterred where we're not doing the things here like we should be doing, what we should be looking for. He wants us to be consumed with something else in our mind. Something that is gonna stall us from doing his work.
Michael, there's been so many things mentioned about, you read about DOS, that's the military, so many military comparisons, and Sally's talking about battle.
Yep.
It really is a battle that we're all in, so, Jesus prayed so often, when he prayed for his disciples and prayed for us, that we'd be as one, is what I think about a lot. He prayed, I think about 4 or 5 times, he mentioned that they would be as one, like we are, talking about the church and disciples. And, if we could all get a sense of what the mission is, you know, what our true calling is, what we're supposed to do, what he expects of us, and pull together, that would be, that'd be a powerful thing.
Yeah.
If we could all get a sense of what we're actually called to do, you know, and be on the same page.
Yep.
That's a prayer of mine.
We all have different talents and different attributes about ourselves and abilities to do different things, and that's what's, I think, pretty awesome is we're all here for a reason.
Well, when you're in a battle, you're looking around and you see, you know, you're in a battle and you look around and you see a brother not there, or a sister not there, something like that. It's like, almost like, I'm concerned about them, but I need help.
Yep.
You know?
Yep.
And we all would be in that position at one time or another.
I'm thankful that I can look around and say, I know each one of these people helped me if I needed it. If nothing else, we're going to close with a word of prayer.
Let me ask a question.
Yes.
Years ago, I asked this man, when he go to church with his wife, he said, you tell me where God come from and I'll go. I said, all I tell you, he was in the beginning, so you can't find God, ain't gonna say, you tell me where God come from. That's all I knew to tell him. The Bible says God was in the beginning.
What better place to start?
What kind of answer do you give to that?
Right there, in the beginning. God created the heaven and the earth.
That'd be a good opportunity to invite someone to church to find out the rest of the story.
You ain't gonna get people like that, you're not gonna get the
I've been there, but you have to pray and ask the Lord, you know, things, you give it to him. I've seen the situation and, you know, when you give it to the Lord, then you just keep praying, and some of the things that happen are beyond your comprehension, beyond human comprehension, because it gets into the spiritual realm and God takes over if you can't give up.
Well, Harold, you could ask, how did a bunch of something come from a bunch of nothing if there was no grand designer or no intelligent designer? So he has to answer to you the same that you have to answer to him.
That's what I asked him though, he had a little boy, and his little boy had been born. I said, I can't answer you exactly what you asked, but I said, you answer me one question. I said, you know basically how that little boy got here. I said, you tell me how he got here.
So what you're gonna find, I think, Harold, and I think that's a pretty good pretty good way to end this up. Every conversation's not gonna be a successful conversation when you deal with something. As a matter of fact, if you read the Word of God, I think you could probably make a pretty good case that there's gonna be a lot more that goes to hell than goes to heaven. I think there's a good argument for that in the Word of God. But you need to not be discouraged because of that, because there's gonna be somebody, I like the literature, ends up with, Philip and the eunuch. Philip found a man in the middle of the desert, and, all he did is ask him, do you know what you're reading? And then that opened up the door for a conversion right there. So not everybody's gonna accept it, Harold, and there was probably no amount of evidence that you could have given the man to make him see that. But not all conversations, but that also don't mean quit either. Just cause one person said no, don't mean say, oh, well, I guess if one said no, the rest of them say no. Just pick up, dust off your feet, and go on to the next one. Don't be discouraged. I don't want nobody else to be discouraged because of it either. Just be ready.
And I think that sometimes people who answer like that, I think they may have a brashness or defensiveness like that because they're struggling with something on the inside. They've been hurt or they've questioned and wondered themselves and they don't have a right answer or they feel like they need a scientific answer. But if for somebody to respond quite like that, they're thinking about it. It's not because they're not. Something somewhere is working on the inside of them. And you may just be a seed, and like even Beverly said, it might be something next that, you know, you expressed your faith in God and then let that keep growing and going, you know. A lot of times when somebody's staunchly against something, I mean, not every time, but, you know, it's because they thought about it. I mean, it's not because they just ignored it.
Peter 3:15 says, be ready always to give an answer for the hope. Sanctify the Lord in your heart. Knowledge comes into play on this. By the renewing of our mind, we're supposed to be transformed. Intellect comes into play, and being able to answer questions like that is an important thing to do, but that doesn't happen by accident. You've got to kind of be ready for a question like that and have thought about it. And that's a big part of what we're trying to do now, I think. Realize that.
Harold, I've heard heard a good number of atheists use that question as a gotcha kind of thing. They think it's a gotcha question. Well, I got you now, you can't answer that. It's not the proper question. If, the way I've heard it responded to before by a Christian man was, if God came from something, you have the complete wrong idea about the God I worship and serve. If my God came from something, he was created, and therefore not God. God is something that is not space, time, or matter, which came into existence simultaneously. Therefore, whatever created space, time, and matter has to be outside of such thing, and that is God. Without that's why in the beginning is
About a year later, his wife died. She was 33 years old. She died in the grocery store. Left with 3 kids.
That's a tough situation, Harold, and you know, I encourage you to just keep pushing on, keep fighting the good fight with that one. Just like we said, we're just trying to plant seeds to begin with. Why don't we close with a word of prayer? Benson, can you lead us?
Lord, we thank you for this day. We thank you for everyone that's come this way. Lord, thank you for the Sunday school lesson. Lord, it's good to hear thoughts from other Christians. Lord, just let us be a light to the lost and give an answer, Lord, that you would be proud of. Lord, go with us on into our next service. Lead, guide, and direct us in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.